Hey, good morning, y'all. It is 7:31 a.m. on Thursday, November 13th. I'm glad to see you. A bit frustrated right now. Yesterday, my audio for my screen stopped working, and I don't know what's going on, but it's not working again today. So, not going to be able to show the opening video I had for chemtrails, which is super disturbing. Maybe I'll come back tomorrow if I get this problem figured out and do that. Yeah, it's an important thing for people to know about. So hopefully we'll talk about that. I spent so much time on trying to figure that out this morning. I didn't even get to read the morning news. Dreamer reminds you, hit that like button right off the bat. Good for people to do. Good to promote your buddy Jeffrey. I want to greet those who are signing on. Hey Scott and Wally. Hey Stacia, Dreamer, Eileen. Good to see you, sister. Keith in Michigan. Hey Brad. Hey Nathan. Right on. Good to have you with us, brother. Um, yeah, I was trying to read. It's hard to know what to make of the news and these different news cycles, but apparently yesterday, I didn't know there was any movement on Jeffrey Epstein, but apparently they've got a ton of his emails, and President Trump is named in them, and in particular one. I didn't think that they released the actual emails, but I guess they did. But the one that Trump is going to have to answer for is Epstein says that he spent a lot of time with one of the ladies who's come out since and accused Epstein himself of sex trafficking. So, um, yeah, let's. This is the New York Times. How about I go to the Free Press? They're not as hostile to Trump, and they wrote about it on the front page as well. If Donald Trump thought the Jeffrey Epstein scandal was over, Wednesday's news suggested otherwise. Democrats in the House released several emails in which the deceased, disgraced New York financier and convicted sex offender mentioned President Donald Trump. In one email, Epstein claimed Trump once, quote, spent hours at my house, end quote, with a woman who later accused Epstein of sexually abusing and trafficking her. In the coming weeks, the House will vote on whether to force the Department of Justice to release its files on Epstein. And that vote will be a critical test of President Donald Trump's political strength, writes Eli Lake, and show whether he's losing his grip on the Republican Party less than a year into his second term. It's no secret that Trump and Epstein were once friends. A quick Google search will show you videos of them dancing together at Mar-a-Lago. But Trump has denied any knowledge of Epstein's alleged sex trafficking of minors. He's repeatedly dismissed the Epstein issue as a Democratic smear campaign and opposes the Justice Department releasing the files. But parts of his base aren't buying it. And some usually loyal members of the House say they'll join with Democrats and demand their disclosure. So will Trump stop the revolt, and what will it mean if he can't? So I think I've followed the Jeffrey Epstein stuff as good as most, probably a little better than most. I've listened to a history of how he came to Israel. I've actually listened to a couple things and read a couple things about how it was that he came to be who he came to be, what is known, what is not known. Um, what seems to be pretty undeniably clear is he was part of facilitating what's called a honeypot operation, where he hosts parties with big, influential, famous people, scientists, legislators, heads of state, media heads, and over facilitates them doing things that they would be mortified if other people knew about, and has it recorded and substantiated so that he can make people do what he wants. And then the question is, at whose behest was he doing this? Was he doing this on his own, or as a representative of a state power? And y'all know I'm a fan of Israel. Broadly speaking, the Jews having claim to the promised land. God's promises are irrevocable. I'm not anti-Jewish at all. However, I am one of these that allows for the state of Israel to be different from the Jewish people. And it does seem pretty clear that Jeffrey Epstein was acting on the behalf of Israel, to exercise influence over American political and public life. I, that's what has explained to me so far the recalcitrance of many American leaders to release the information known about Jeffrey Epstein this whole time. It, many reasonable people beyond me have not thought that Donald Trump was complicit in this stuff, but that he is complicit in wanting Israel to maintain to save face in the midst of this. That if files were publicly released, what would be seen as that Israel was facilitating and facilitating the compromise of American public leadership. And if that was to be seen, then public sentiment would turn against Israel even more than we're currently seeing right now. But if it turns out that President Donald Trump was involved with any of these young ladies that were sex trafficked, things get so much uglier so very quickly. I'm really hoping that that doesn't isn't revealed. That would just make all this so ugly and sad. So what's good for America, what's good for the world. I think the truth. I mean, this is where our commitment to the truth really figures in. Do we think, I mean, if the truth is going to, you know, who was it that said, it was Immanuel Kant, wasn't it? If the truth shall kill them, then let them die, which is a very cruel quote. But if the current order is built on dishonesty, blackmail, it's got to go. I don't know. I mean, this is where, okay, are we people of integrity or are we people of the noble lie? And man, I just don't think we can be people of the noble lie. So I think we have to be prepared for the truth in whatever form it comes, and then we have to know where to go forward from here. But whenever it's talking about the Republican base starting to fall away, Marjorie Taylor Greene has been a very interesting story. Watching just how outspoken she was, and then she really seems to have taken a different demeanor as she understands how complex things are. I love when people get humbled like this, but she's not the only one. I think a lot of people are coming to understand that this current balance just can't maintain. And I don't know what the next few weeks look like. Apparently, the vote to release the Epstein files, however extensive that is going to be next week, which is something that uh, has been delayed a lot. I think it's to our benefit to get out ahead of these things and learn the truth. Y'all, I was talking just yesterday about a new church commission. I think these things are to our benefit, but I'm saying this from the privileged position of not knowing what would be revealed. So maybe on the other side of this, if it actually does get revealed, I'll be saying, man, I really wish. Yeah, well, it's hard to imagine me wishing that lies would stay hidden. I just think we have if Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and you have to believe he is, then you can never think the truth is a threat. I mean, it is a threat to something, but then we can never be on the side of lies, I think, right? Kevin's with us. Deborah, good to see your name. Brian is with us. Marjorie Taylor Greene is really something with this chemtrail stuff. I It's being substantiated. So I've listened to so much on chemtrails at this point. I'm just so the video we were gonna watch. Hopefully, we're gonna watch it tomorrow whenever I get my audio working. Is well, and if you're friends with me on X, here's the thing. I posted a video this morning. It's just audio, really, of a lady confronting the pilots who are doing this in her area. And people are taking air samples after these planes fly overhead. It seems really clear that they're putting heavy metals in the air. And some people think it's because they're worried about environmental stuff and they want to reflect some of the sunlight back out into space. But and we'll talk more about this when we actually watch it. But it seems to me, if you know the history of Monsanto, and the weed killer Roundup, what they did was they circulated their product, which does effectively kill weeds, but it also kills normal crops. And so, in order to grow corn or whatever you want to grow, you have to buy their genetically modified version that is immune to Roundup. So you have to buy their Roundup and their seeds, and then that's what allows you to participate in the modern market. Well, weeds are evolving and Roundup isn't working nearly as well anymore. So how do you still make it so that they have to buy your GMO seeds? Well, if you make the soil very hostile to normal plants, then they have to buy your GMO seeds if they're going to grow anything. And so that's a video that Marjorie Taylor Greene posted, was this farmer who's saying, look, the heavy metal content in my soil has quintupled in the last year, because of all the, ostensibly because of all this spraying. A causative relationship hasn't been demonstrated yet, to my knowledge. But Tucker Carlson just recently hosted this guy who's supposedly an expert on this. It's just one of those things where there's been a steady drip for a couple decades of people talking more and more about chemtrails, and people saying this is a conspiracy theory. We're not doing this. It seems more and more clear that it actually is being done. So, Marjorie Taylor Greene, if you didn't see her on the Bill Maher's show, she appeared just a couple weeks ago, and I thought behaved herself very well. I mean, she comes off as nutty still, but not nearly as nutty as. And she just came out flatly and said these unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, UFOs, seem real. I mean, they're getting reports about it at Capitol Hill all the time. And she says if there is non-human organic life that this is tied to, it's actually demons, And the people on the panel are just like, "You're crazy," but I just think we have to know what to make of these things, And so many of us grew up with religion being something off to the side that doesn't necessarily interact with politics or science or history. And I think we were given a version of the Christian faith that is something far less than what it is. I think it does have implications so far as technology and history and science and all these things go, and politics, and these are areas where we have to apply our faith biblically, literally in some sense. And that's the regular conversation I'm keeping going here with y'all, and you're keeping me sane and tethered as I ask questions I haven't really been able to ask before. Speaking of good people to help me do that, this is Tyson Hines. He is a great person. I'm glad to have you on board with us, brother. Kirk is fantastic. Janice is fantastic. Man, I love this crew. Hey, Tim. Hey, Lisa. Lots of farms here. I work with an Amish company, and they can often switch between heirloom and GMO seeds. Really? I didn't know the Amish would work with GMO seeds. But I mean, you kind of have to if you're going to grow some stuff, depending on where you are. Um, we lived in Idaho first few years of my ministry, and everything just sprouted out of the ground. It was awesome. It was so easy. And then we moved to Oklahoma where the soil has been depleted, or maybe it was never any good to begin with, and we can't grow hardly anything. It's frustrating. Hey, brother Joseph and Kathy, good to see you, Earl. All right, I've already kind of gone in a nutty direction. Let's bring it home to a good, faithful prayer. Jesus, my glory, page 24 in the Valley of Vision prayer. Collection of Puritan prayers and devotions. The Lord be with you. O Lord God, thou hast commanded me to believe in Jesus, and I would flee to no other refuge, wash in no other fountain, build on no other foundation, receive from no other fullness, rest in no other relief. His water and blood were not severed in the flow at the cross. May they never be separated in my creed and experiences. May I be equally convinced of the guilt and pollution of sin, feel my need of a prince and savior, implore of him repentance as well as forgiveness, love holiness, and be pure in heart. May I have the mind of Jesus and tread in his steps. Let me not be at my own disposal, but rejoice that I am under the care of one who is too wise to err, too kind to injure, too tender to crush. May I scandalize none by my temper and conduct, but recommend and endear Christ to all around, bestow good on every one as circumstances permit, and decline no opportunity of usefulness. Grant that I may value my substance, not as the medium of pride and luxury, but as the means of my support and stewardship. Help me to guide my affections with discretion, to owe no man anything, to be able to give to him that needeth, to feel it my duty and pleasure to be merciful and forgiving, to show the world the likeness of Jesus. Amen. Y'all like my wrinkly shirt this morning? Can you tell I don't iron my clothes? Um, yeah, I didn't even look at additional news this morning. Let me just kind of peruse the news from see if there's anything else going on. This is the Free Press. Based capitalism, great. Okay, yeah, the shutdown is over. 43 days. I did see that this morning. Yeah, Roman Catholicism has taken a tack towards immigration that I don't like, but I haven't earnestly taken the time to really hear them make a good case. It's just I don't know. I need to take time to actually read the Pope or somebody. Yeah, BBC drama. Ugh. Benjamin Netanyahu. Mm. He's tied to this Israel concern that I have. Oh, dude, we haven't even talked about the 50-year mortgage thing, but yeah, the government intervention in the economy is just a mess. Oh yeah, and we stopped producing pennies yesterday. Yesterday was the final day. End of an era, guys. I'm kind of sentimental about that. I remember just looking, studying my pennies as a little boy, loving my little pennies. No more pennies. My kids are going to grow up in a world without pennies. Um, this is the New York Times now. A federal judge in Chicago plans to order the release of hundreds of immigrants who were arrested during the Trump administration's crackdown in the city. I don't know. We can't look at it this morning. I think y'all, most of you know who Steven Crowder is. He has started up the series "Change My Mind Again," going to college campuses. He came to Oklahoma University, and had changed my mind on deport all illegals. That was what it was, and had a really good presentation. Did very well. uh, I really enjoy that. I mean, they're never perfect segments. You don't get like the perfect arguing partner, and some do better than others. The first one is very irritating, but one of the things that he alleges is so we still argue about how much illegal immigration is costing taxpayers when you look at how many get on different welfare programs, how many illegal immigrants get on welfare programs, how many benefit from public schooling, how many go to the emergency room and rack up bills that never get paid. When you look at these different things, it's estimated that they cost the U.S. economy billions in dollars every year. And then he alleges the cost of deporting just one immigrant is $17,000, which is incredible. But he says if we deported all the illegal immigrants within a year, paying $17,000 a pop for each, that would still cost us less than what they are costing us right now. in America, which is an incredible thing to consider. But if that's true, what a thing. And that's not just an opinion. If you've never seen these things before, he actually cites his data. He has like a QR code you can scan, and you can go, and they're like Bureau of Labor Statistics and stuff that he cites. So, uh, man, I really appreciate people like him who have the energy to do this and have these debates. So, it's you have to take the time to fit. I remember being in high school and getting on the internet and just trying to find a pie chart of American federal government spending. What percentage of our annual revenue is going to X, Y, or Z? And then just realizing I am not going to get a solid answer here. There is nobody who can do this. Everything is so convoluted. It takes people really getting in the weeds. It takes people. I'm going to talk about it again on X. I reposted this morning this woman going and confronting these pilots who are flying over her land and dispersing all these heavy metals. And they're saying, you need to contact so and so. And she's saying, I have contacted them. They don't return my call. Here are the names of the people I know. I need to make sure you guys know this is the impact you are having on us and our children and our land. What a thing. I wish I could play it for you guys. I will get my audio figured out. Um, yeah, okay. I'm going to be done with the news for this morning. Good to have Andrew with us. I'm a hard no on believing the chemtrails conspiracy, but that's not why I come here. Okay, what would you need to see? What would we need to see to be open to this not being a conspiracy theory? They cost 37 cents each to make. Yeah, pennies. Wasted something like $50 billion a year. I think I read so. Oh my gosh, that's a huge number. Glad to see you, our German friend Katrin. All right, so I can't do the first thing up. Let's just go whenever the people who proclaim that folks like me are heartless and don't even care whenever their virtue signaling does not result in any real action. It's just so much speech. So this was actually published at the beginning of the month. Religion News Service says at the height of the anti-racism protests following the murder of George Floyd in 2020, the idea of reparations for Black Americans for the long shadow of slavery gained traction. State and city leaders, as well as religious leaders, began to consider how to compensate those whose unpaid work had made them what they are today. In Virginia, the Episcopal Church's history of slavery made this quest especially significant. Quote, I mean, it's the state of the Confederacy, said Reverend Kelly Brown Douglas, a Harvard Divinity School professor who served on the neighboring Episcopal Diocese of Washington's Reparations Committee. Quote, if there is a diocese that could actually model and lead the way in this regard, it would be a diocese like that of Virginia. In 1860, some 82% of Episcopal clergy enslaved at least one other person in Virginia, according to the U.S. Census. In 2021, the Virginia Diocesan Convention, the diocese's governing body, voted to appoint a racial reparations task force and to raise $10 million toward a reparations endowment. The resolution did not specify what form those reparations would take, but it said it should, quote, be determined by and made to people directly affected, end quote, by chattel slavery and violence against indigenous peoples. But nearly 4 years later, the Virginia Church's reparations effort has stalled, with no evidence that any of the $10 million has been raised. In March, Bishop Mark Stevenson abruptly dismissed the task force in a Zoom call, former members told Religion News Service, and the diocese has quietly missed goals once trumpeted as social justice wins. Even as corporations have recently backed away from diversity, equity, and inclusion pledges, Episcopal Church leaders continue to embrace racial justice, even in its most controversial form of reparations. But the experience of Virginia, the denomination's largest domestic diocese, shows that overcoming the practical challenges of reparations work, securing funds, agreeing on goals, and unifying the diocese behind the plan requires more than a commitment to righting the wrongs of the past. So the article is actually much longer than that. But it's just kind of an important thing to keep an eye on, because it's not hard to say the right thing. It is much harder to do the right thing. So the biblical language about salvation is, if you confess with your lips that Christ is Lord. How hard is that? Say it. Christ is Lord. That's not hard at all. And you believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead is the second part of that. That's much harder. And it's one thing to say you believe in that, but do you really believe in a God who is not limited by cause and effect? That's essentially to say that God raised Jesus from the dead, that he brought life to that mortal body and transformed it, brought it to heaven, and now he sits at the right hand of God. I mean, this is when you really believe in a God who is not limited by physics, by nature, who can reverse death, who can overcome death. I mean, that's what we're saying when you believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead. So many people saying the words is not hard. Christ is Lord. Christ is Lord. If you confess with your lips that Christ is Lord, it's not hard. What is hard is to believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead. It's not hard to say you'll do the right thing. We were talking yesterday. Jesus tells a story about two sons. The father goes to one, says, "Will you go and work?" He says, "Yes, I will." He doesn't go. Second one, "Will you go?" "No, I won't." But then he goes. It's so easy to say, "Yes, Father, I'll do the work." It's much harder to actually do the work. We have to confess with our lips that Christ is Lord, that we will do the work, and we have to believe in our heart. We have to actually do the work. And so it's not hard for a church to virtue signal. I come out of a tribe very much like the Episcopal Church that's very good at virtue signaling, is going to on war to end racism. Well, we're going to do it. We're going to end racism in this generation. And part of that is by paying big checks. We are going to beat poverty by throwing a bunch of money at poverty. People don't realize the way that they solve these issues is not Christian in nature, it's Marxist in nature. The Marxist worldview is materialist, says that we are the byproduct of our financial well-being, pretty much, that we are synonymous with our material standing. That is not the Christian message. The Christian message is blessed are the poor. Jesus says flatly in the Gospel of Luke, love of money is the root of all evil, he says in First Timothy. Uh, we are warned about a materialist worldview. Not that money is evil, but that money is secondary or tertiary to what actually matters. And so when we're talking about actually ameliorating the racial disparity in this nation, when we're talking about actually ameliorating poverty and inequity and any given problem, anytime we look at that as a fundamentally material problem, we are not going to be able to solve it. So whether or not they actually ever put together these $10 million is irrelevant, because those $10 million would do nothing. And in fact, I make the case, and many other people do, that by continuing to treat spiritual problems with money, we're actually making things worse. And when you think about the metaphor of the body, if you go in to a doctor and he misdiagnoses your malady and treats it, he is most likely going to make things worse if he is treating an underlying condition that you don't have. And it's worth remembering that it's the second or third leading cause of death in our nation, medical misdiagnosis and treatment, taking the wrong medications. This happens. Uh, it's no surprise that the world does this. What is a scandal is that the church continually says we are going to treat this spiritual problem financially. And then when you see that whenever it comes at an actual cost, so many churches are unwilling to do it. So when you look at the United Methodist Church, how much virtue signaling and high minded rhetoric has been spent about being global partners, and then they pass this constitutional amendment that effectively severs the United States from the rest of the world so they can hoard more money and power to themselves, where there is no provision to end the uh, uh, jurisdictional conferences, where there is no resolution to better populate their general boards and agencies with global partners. All of that is, it's so much cheap talk that sounds good and then actually reinforces the status quo. The Episcopal Church is the same. This is how worldly organizations work. And that's part of why I started this whole thing, is to say, okay, the Global Methodist Church is having this rhetoric about being a global body and having global partners. let's actually see if we're doing that. And then, I hopefully will be publishing tomorrow an interview I had yesterday with a guy in France talking about how the Global Methodist Church is working in Western Europe. Pretty interesting. So I've had a series of interviews with different conference superintendents and people active overseas, and it does seem to me that it's not so much empty speech, but good things are actually happening. If you didn't see my interview with Jeff Walton, he is of the Anglican tradition, which this article was concerned with. And he was talking about at one point a church that has a great multiracial environment, but how they don't talk about it at all. And I brought that to Methodism as well, where our institutions that are the least concerned with racial justice and virtue signaling happen to be the places where non-white people are the most prevalent. The kind of chicken and egg thing. It's almost as though uh, Marxist white people rhetoric is anathema to the gospel of Jesus Christ and for the very real interests of non-white people. So anyway, everything I see about the Episcopal Church reinforces my resolve to have nothing to do with progressivism, leftism, social justice, warriorism, wokeism. I just think it all fits within a greater amalgam of dishonest, kind of gross vanity. Kevin says, with respect to chemtrails, I'd need to see insiders and whistleblowers about chemtrails. I don't think I've seen any, just people finding evidence to prove their belief. It's just unlikely that there would be such a vast conspiracy with no inside evidence, only observation and correlation. Okay, that's helpful. Let me let's go to Grok. Have there been any insiders or what was the other thing? Whistleblowers with respect to chemtrails. Let's see what Grok says. Kristen Megan. Man, it's really doing some research, isn't it? All right. Kristen Megan is the main one. Look at all that information. No, don't give me notifications. Kristen Megan is a former U.S. Air Force bioenvironmental engineer and industrial hygienist, now a health coach and speaker. Her key claims: while trying to debunk chemtrails, she allegedly discovered she was approving shipments of toxic chemicals, aluminum oxide, barium salts, strontium, for undisclosed aerial spraying programs tied to geoengineering and weather modification. She claims high contaminant levels in air soil samples she took, violating her oath, leading her to resign and speak out. The key quote is: in the process of trying to debunk it, I realized it was actually coming right out of my office. I was one of the people approving the chemicals. What evidence did she provide? Personal testimony. She mentions unpublished samples showing elevated metals, but no public data. All right, so what's the criticism? Her role involved routine environmental compliance, not aerial operations. Skeptics on forums like metabunk.org note she has not shared sample results or documents despite requests, and her claims conflate legitimate chemical storage with secret spraying. She has testified in state hearings, but remains unverified by federal probes. Key debunks elevated metals in samples. They're often from natural sources, vehicle emissions, or coal plants, not uniform aerial spraying. Real research is small scale and transparent. Cloud seeding is regulated and unrelated to contrails. Yeah, it's just one of those things where, hmm, I guess I need to look at the guy that uh, Tucker Carlson interviewed and see what kind of engagement has been given. I think there are so with Operation Arctic Frost, for example, that's now being substantiated. How many people were active and involved in that, and how many actually came forward? In the end, I think the whistleblower has been anonymous, right? But they at least came with receipts. So we'll need to see receipts, I guess, in order for this to be substantiated. Um, yeah, we'll see. Andrew was answering as well. When it comes to heavy metals in the soil, I always want to know more like, is there a power plant nearby that burns coal, or is there a factory nearby that uses certain chemicals? And complicated molecules like Roundup would have to be sprayed, not combusted in the engines. And when you look at airliners, there is no way to dispense chemicals aside from combustion. Yeah, yeah. If you're dealing with anything biochemical like that, then that's the case. But if you're that's a separate thing. I started off with the Monsanto thing as a metaphor for how, not metaphor, but an allegory, uh, corollary for how it is that this would be an economic incentive. If you create a hostile environment for natural plants, then you can have the GMO plants. So if you create a strain of GMO plants that thrive in soil that has heavy metals in it, then you can just spray heavy metals in the air. He says, I'd contend that DEF used in diesel engines would be a much more efficient way to chemtrail the country than airplanes. Well, and who's to say there's just one method they're using? Maybe that as well. So we're this is the sort of thing where people are going to keep pushing on this. So we'll see, and hopefully I'll remember to come back and admit I was wrong if it turns out it's never substantiated. But they're pushing. They're pushing. Dreamer says, if you ever doubt God's existence, all you need to go do is go outside last night and view the northern lights. They were spectacular here in southern West Virginia. I tried to see them last night. They didn't make it down to Oklahoma real well. Some people said they did. I don't know. I guess I was standing at the wrong place. Yeah. Good morning, brother Dana. Kevin says, I know there's some companies that do seed clouds like the one in Texas or Arizona, but the sheer amount of chemicals or minerals needed to do something like this at scale is staggering. Well, and man, I've seen pictures of people outside just taking pictures of the sky and just a dozen trails, so and if this has been going on for decades as it's being alleged, then yeah, there's a cumulative effect. No, I hear you. I'm not hopefully I don't come off as threatened. I just think I think it's good if it is real, if it's good to ask the question and investigate if it's real. They typically will use Roundup here to stop the growth cycle for harvest, not for weeds. Well, there's how it started, and then there's how it's going. They also use it to dry out crops artificially faster than they would otherwise. Um, yeah, that stinks. All right, we've got time for one other topic, probably. Oh, yeah, this is a good thing. We've prayed for folks in Nigeria, but it's one thing to pray for them. It's another thing to say we need to get the government concerned about them. It's another thing. Okay, what can we do? Who can we support? Where can we throw our weight? I really appreciate Ministry Watch for doing this very practical work. This was published at the end of last month. Nigeria is one of the most dangerous places in the world for Christians. On the World Watch list produced by Open Doors, Nigeria comes in at 7th with a persecution level of 88 out of 100. Fellow Christians face violent persecution from multiple groups, including Fulani extremists, Boko Haram, Islamic State, West Africa Province, and other armed militants who have killed thousands of believers, destroyed hundreds of churches, and forced entire Christian communities to flee their homes. We've seen this substantiated. We've seen the mass graves. Um, this this is not a conspiracy theory. Open Doors says the violence is systematic and not random. On October 14th, Fulani extremists carried out a wave of coordinated attacks that left at least 13 Christians dead. Um, All right, we know a lot of this. Let's skip down a little bit. All right. Because of the prolonged persecution in Nigeria, several ministries have been working in the country for years. First one mentioned here is Open Doors. According to Brown, Open Doors has been working for Nigeria for decades. We were there before the violence escalated. We'll be there long after. We call it Presence Ministry, and it's a foundation of everything we do. So I think it's just opendoors.org, us.org. Okay, yeah, if you go to opendoors.org, opendoorsUS.org, then that's where you can go to give now. My wife and I give on a monthly basis to them. We're very glad to support them. Um, Open Doors works with local churches in Nigeria because they're already doing the work, leading house churches under threat, caring for displaced believers, training new pastors even when it's dangerous. Open Doors comes alongside them with resources, training, and support. They believe working with the local church provides access and effectiveness because local pastors understand the dynamics. They speak the language and have established relationships that allow them to make an impact much faster than a foreign worker could. This is common sense, and yet there are a lot of foreign agencies that don't have it in them to work with local partners, and that's a problem. Open Doors is careful to vet its local partners over time, looking for ministry effectiveness, spiritual maturity, theological alignment, integrity, and reputation within the community. Quote, we maintain ongoing accountability through regular communication, site visits when security allows, and detailed reporting on both program outcomes and spiritual impact. Donors can give specifically to the Arise Africa Fund. Here, let's see if we can't do that. Hmm. I'm not seeing the way to do that. To assist the needs among persecuted in Africa, including Nigeria. However, Brown said that giving to the general fund allows them to give to projects in areas of persecution that may not be publicized due to safety concerns. Brown urged fellow believers to pray for Nigerian Christians' protection, wisdom, and healing from trauma. She also asked Christians to pray for the government of Nigeria to protect all citizens equally. And the Ministry Watch database, Open Doors US has a donor confidence score of 60. If y'all don't know about this, and I think I do have the link to this in the show notes actually. But they have a write up on every single Christian organization, maybe not every single, but a, a ton. And they have these write ups on their reporting and whether or not uh, one should exercise caution in supporting these different organizations. Primarily due to a low financial efficiency rating and board composition. So they look at these different factors involved in um, whether or not you should support them. And I haven't spent a lot of time studying this, so I can't really walk you through. They only have a board size of 3. Okay, so that's a problem for them. What was the other problem? Low financial efficiency rating. How would they even? Okay, overall efficiency rating, 1 star. So they have a good asset utilization rating, but then bad resource allocation and fund acquisition. Huh. I need to think more about this. But when they're the only ones doing the work, I mean, I don't know. International Christian Concern, that's another one. Along with its advocacy work on behalf of persecuted Christians around the world, International Christian Concern also provides tangible assistance in several major areas: emergency relief, community development, Christian convert outreach, gospel initiatives, and education. I actually haven't heard of them before, so obviously I haven't supported them. Do they have a, you can't even click on the link. Persecution.org is their website. Interesting. They just have give at the top. I'm not seeing a dialogue for actually giving. Oh, there it is. Just took a minute to come up. Okay. All right, going back to all right. For example, International Christian Concern provides widows in Nigerian of Christian Nigerian martyrs with a small plot of land and chickens so they can sell eggs to sustain themselves. It builds schools and refugee camps in Nigeria. Cool. In the Ministry Watch database, International Christian Concern has a high donor confidence score of 97, meaning donors can give with confidence. Cool. The next organization is Christian Aid Mission. This missions organization has been supporting indigenous ministry in Nigeria since the 1990s. The missionaries are working among over 30 unreached people groups and are remaining on the field despite the dangers, especially in northern Nigeria. Brittany Tedesco told Ministry Watch. So, okay. So they're doing missionary work, not just among the persecuted Christians, but also spreading the gospel to unreached people groups. Missionaries also work in refugee camps, starting schools and providing health care. Drilling wells in villages has been a very effective way for missionaries to open doors with Muslim leaders and reach them with the gospel. Many of the Fulani people are nomadic herdsmen, and missionaries have been able to provide schools on wheels and veterinarians to treat their livestock. Donors can designate a gift directly to Nigeria and can also find prayer requests for the Nigerian church. So, yeah, I didn't pull up their website yet. Christian Aid Mission. It looks like it's christianaid.org is the website. And okay, I'm learning things. Um, in the Ministry Watch database, Christian Aid Mission has a donor confidence score of 51, meaning donors should exercise caution in giving. The low donor confidence score is primarily due to the fact that the ministry does not file a Form 990 with the IRS or post an audited financial report on its website. Yeah, that's a big deal. Voice of the Martyrs. Okay, my wife and I also support them. For at least 30 years, Voice of the Martyrs has been working to help persecuted believers in the northern areas of Nigeria. Todd Nettleton told Ministry Watch, while the persecution has increased recently, it has been going on for decades, he said. One of the unique aspects of Nigeria is the north-south divide, he said. While there is massive persecution in the north, there are megachurches worshiping in the south. Voice of the Martyrs has staff on the ground in Nigeria that works in partnership with local churches and Christian aid groups. Their goal is to come alongside Christians in Nigeria and serve them. One of the ways it does this is by helping widows of murdered Christians by bringing them to a place of safety where they can heal and create bonds of fellowship with other widows. In the Ministry Watch database, Voice of the Martyrs has a confidence score of 51, meaning donors should exercise caution when giving. The low donor confidence is primarily due to the fact that Voice of the Martyrs does not file a Form 990. It does, however, post an audited financial report on its website. How much longer is it? Okay, it's not a lot longer. This is the last group. SIM USA. SIM has missionaries serving in Nigeria seeking to reach Muslims in the north with the gospel. It also seeks to support persecuted Christians, engages in healthcare missions, and has equipped the growing church through theological education. SIM encourages believers to pray for effective ministry among the growing number of Muslim background believers, for sufficient support for missionaries among the Fulani people, and for more theological educators, medical professionals, educational consultants, and teachers. You should really care about the ones that are engaging the Fulani because remember, they are the primary ethnic group that's persecuting Christians. If you can start turning some of them, that would be very beneficial. In the Ministry Watch database, SIM USA has a donor confidence score of 53, meaning donors should exercise caution when giving. The low donor confidence is primarily due to the fact that they do not file a Form 990. It does, however, post an audited financial report. And then the final one is Global Christian Relief. It works with local partners to provide medical care, emergency food relief, income generating opportunities, and other services. Donors can't give a designated gift to Nigeria through Global Christian Relief. Any gifts given on this page will go where needed most, including projects in Nigeria, it says on the ministry website. They have a score of 53 because of the Form 990 thing. Man, this is really helpful. Okay, so if you want the one that has the highest rating, um, was it? I'm looking for it had a 91. No, 97. That was International Christian Concern. Was it this one? I'm forgetting. International Christian Concern. You have to incentivize these organizations. You got to give to the one. Okay, so it's persecution.org. If you go to persecution.org, that's the one that Ministry Watch says has the best financial policies, best financial stewardship. I'm going to continue to support Open Doors and Voice of the Martyrs, but a lot of, if you're just now starting, if you're just now thinking about giving money where you know it's going to be used rightly, it seems like going to persecution.org is probably the thing to do. I think, you or I also think people, if I could encourage you, need to go to their church board and make sure that your church is, with the combined funds that you've got, giving to organizations that benefit the persecuted church. So it's great for you to privately give, and yes, you should privately give. But if you do tithe, you give 10% of your income to the church, then you are entitled to have a voice in how it is that your church spends that money for God's glory. And so I personally, I think like in an ideal church, people give sacrificially to the church as much as they can, and then collaboratively they give as a church to these different organizations that are glorifying God. And then whenever you see these organizations that are really good about earning and maintaining trust, then God is glorified in these things. So I think it's one thing to, I was just criticizing lefties who virtue signal and they say the right thing, but then when it comes time to do something, they don't do it. Well, that's not a tendency that's only on the left, so it has been substantiated for a long time that right-leaning people do give more benevolently, willingly, than people on the left. That's not an opinion. This has been substantiated. But that doesn't mean that all right-leaning people or all Christians match their. Jesus says, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." He says it very flatly, and yet there are a lot of people who, it's almost as though when they're baptized, they want to hold their wallet out of the water. And it's really important to conform our financial lives to our values. And if we say we care about the persecuted church, well, guess what? There are many different agencies that are engaged in not just offering comfort to, but equipping the persecuted church. And so we should take joy in having enough to support organizations like that. It's fine, Kevin. It don't bother me. Paul Crutzen, Nobel Prize winner Paul Crutzen, he talks about sulfur injection in the stratosphere. Okay, interesting to look into. Thank you, Katrine. Oh man, you guys really followed up on this. I didn't know this. Unleaded gas. I guess we're done with the Nigeria thing. Unleaded gas is called unleaded because lead used to be in gasoline, and perhaps a large reason why lead poisoning used to be so much more common in America was because all our cars were going around emitting lead into the atmosphere, which is crazy to think about. Another thing that's crazy is lead is still in a ton of things that we use on a daily basis. Um, so that's a whole other thing. But whenever we have this history of emitting things into the atmosphere, it has been through automotive. Um, but yeah, when we're looking at these planes as well, the whole reason why it would be in the atmosphere is to get it high. I mean, when there's a stratification in our atmosphere, then certain things are only going to be effective if you emit them from the top and then they sink down rather than starting at the bottom. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I kind of wish I hadn't even said that. I feel like I sounded really stupid. Is there anything else I wanted to talk about today? Can't watch any videos. I think I'm going to let this Redeem Zoomer thing go. I just don't care, really. Oh, you are a pilot. Interesting. Low lead. Well, good. I'd hope you use low lead gas. Dreamer says always used iron skillet made in the USA because the skillets made in China used iron. I think he meant to say lead, maybe. But yeah, it's a problem. All right. Well, I don't have anything else on my agenda for today. Oh, you do use leaded, well, low lead gas. Okay, 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 okay. Tomorrow is Friday. If you have anything you want me to discuss, hopefully I will have my video stuff figured out. We can watch some fun video of some crazy libs or something. But if not, let's make sure we spend our time well. I don't want my show to be like, here's the latest conspiracy theory. So I know we got into that a bit today. I just my overall concern is that we're able to ask questions and exercise skepticism, even if this is not the issue. I just think, well, and where we started with is, President Trump. Could he be a problem? Could he have done problematic things in the past? Uh, could Israel be responsible? Being prepared for these things so that whenever it comes out, we're not. Yeah, I guess that's my overall concern. And then I'll pray. My overall concern is that we have kind of imagined the world to be a safer place than it is, or we imagine ourselves to understand kind of what the score is. And I just think there's a very real possibility that different things come out in the future that really destabilize us and make us feel very unsafe if we've built on a foundation that is not good. And so I just think it's important to look at these other things and be able to ask questions and then say, okay, what is solid? And what is solid is Jesus. So let's go to the Lord in prayer. Lord, you are solid, or biblically speaking, you are faithful. You are faithful when we are faithless. You are good whenever we fail. And we thank you for that, Father. We thank you for making us solid like you by the power of your Holy Spirit through the redeeming blood of your Son Jesus shed on the cross for us. Lord, help us to live our lives rightly, not trusting in the strength of a man or the strength of a horse, not putting our trust in princes, but putting all of our trust in you. We lift up our brothers and sisters in Nigeria and throughout the world who suffer persecution for your name's sake. We thank you for them. We ask that you give them strength for the days ahead. We ask that you would conform us, our budgets, our hearts, uh, to that which is most important, that you would help us to lift up the persecuted in prayer, and that you would help us to be united with them and supporting them financially, and most importantly, through prayer all our days. Lord, it could be that times of persecution are coming for us. We ask that you would equip us for such times so that we are not falling away if and when that time comes. Lord, look benevolently upon your people. Bless your church despite our many failures. Equip us for the days ahead for your glory. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. That'll be it for today. I'll see you tomorrow.